Welcome, my friends. Silouan here. I have a statement and a question for you today that I'm going to discuss while you're pondering, especially the question. The statement is an obvious one. It's a cliche almost. There's no I in team. That's a statement. The question is, but what's your team? Do you feel like you're part of a team? Because whether you feel that way or not, you are. You are part of a team. That team may be at work. That team may be at home. That team may be at church. It may be in a club. A lot of places you could be part of a team. And what I notice is, especially the further away we get from our youth, when we played soccer, or maybe, we played basketball, or maybe if we were in the military and then we got out of the military, or maybe early in a marriage, we felt like we're in this together. Over time, what happens, we kind of get away from the team, the T, the E, the A, and the M, and we start veering over towards the I. Now, just recently, I saw this from somebody older, somebody younger. I was doing a 3-day leadership class over in Ohio, and when I'm doing so, a lot of what I talk about is family issues, because we think we can completely compartmentalize our lives, but you really can't. One thing impacts the other. Now, in the moment, you compartmentalize and you focus. I'm at work, I'm at home. But big picture, you can't ignore the fact the one impacts the other, especially if you do high pressure, high stress type of jobs, the kind of things that you bring home. And in this class, I had this older officer who came up to me, and he basically said, you're right, man. I've been thinking about myself for way too long. I haven't been thinking about, what's best for my family, what's best for my kids, what's best for my wife. And when I do, it's from the I perspective. What's best for me? What do I want to do? And really the thing that woke him up was realizing, him and his wife don't really plan anymore. They don't sit down and go, where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we going to be in a year? What do we want as a family? He doesn't do the same thing for his kids. You know why? Because they don't eat together. They don't play board games together. Had someone else in that same class and had kids who had just moved out of the house, and they talked about how they could remember when they were little, they would sit around the table and they would do things together, play games together. And then as time went on, they stopped doing that, and now she couldn't remember anything they had done like that. And she was talking about dusting off the old board games and maybe going and finding some other ones and beginning to do that very same thing. And all of them were coming to the realization that, when you're waking up every day and you're just seeing everything from this I perspective, you completely lose empathy for everybody else. And it's almost like life is a competition. I really believe that's where a lot of anxiety people feel comes from. Is that they feel like they're competing, not just with the world, and bills and dreams they want to achieve. They're competing against the individuals they work with, the people that are part of their team, because you're part of a team. And then I come back off that trip, and basketball team that I coach, we had our first practice, and one of the things, in our program, one of the things I push, I call it God Team Fun. There's no I in any of those three. And one of the values that I'm really trying to teach these kids is that when you have a life of service, when you think you're there to make others better, everybody's better. For an obvious reason. If you have a team of 12 players and 11 of them want you to do your best, and that happens because you want them to do their best, you're going to do better. You're going to have people picking you up when you need picked up. You're going to have people kicking you in the butt when you need kicked in the butt. You're going to have people enjoying things with you, sorrowing things with you. You're part of a team. It's going to be better. But when you got 12 individuals all worried about themselves, you don't do as good as you could do. You see it all the time in sports. You see teams that overachieve because they're a team. You see teams underachieve because they're just a bunch of individuals. And that ain't just sports. That's not just sports. It's your family. You have a house, and maybe it's mom and a couple kids. Maybe it's mom and dad and no kids. Who knows what it is? But if they're all waking up every day and going to work every day and coming home every day, and everyone's attitude is, where am I going and what do I want to do? You're never going to achieve what you want to achieve. You see it in business a lot. You see it in high performance organizations a lot. If you don't have a clear goal, if you don't have a clear objective that you are all going towards, eventually you're going to go like this. Long ago, when I was young, my wife and I, had little Isaac running around, and I had this priest tell me a story, and I've always found it to be so true. And a lot of times in life, when I feel off track, when I feel like I'm battling everybody, when I feel like, why can't they get it? Or, what's wrong with me? Why don't I see it? I always come back to this story. Life can be hard. And sometimes, we can end up in a moment where we feel like all we're doing is surviving. Imagine being, kind of in the middle of the desert. Now, what can happen? Sometimes you can be in the middle of that desert. You can feel like you're just surviving with just like a couple of people. And if you're ever, in that situation, sometimes it can really bring you together because everybody sees where they want to go off in the distance. And because they feel like they're dying, everyone is kind of like, yeah, let's go there. And it can really bring people together. But what can happen if you're not careful is this. Imagine a group in a desert. And they want to get out of the desert desperately. And they look off in the distance and they see this mountain range. And in the middle of this mountain range is big mountain. And you can tell all around that are these valleys and these other mountains, and it's green and there's rivers and all kinds of great stuff, settlements, everything you need. But you're so far away, no matter what your point of view is, it just looks like you're going in the same direction. So as everybody together begins to move through this desert towards this objective, this mountain, everyone kind of feels like, we're all in this together. That's where we're going. But what often happens in life, at work, teams, marriage and relationships, we kind of put our head down and we start going. And maybe because we're getting tired, we don't communicate as much. And maybe because we're tired and we don't sleep and we're trying to get there, we're not at our best and we're getting a little cranky. And maybe I don't really like you, but that's okay because we're moving in the same direction. You put up with things and you put things off. And then what happens, unknown, really to each other, to everyone, is as you get a little bit closer and it feels like you're moving in the same direction, actually what's beginning to happen, one person's looking at that big mountain and going, man, that's where I want to go. And someone else is looking at that valley over to the side of it going, that valley, that's where I want to go. And then someone else is looking over the mountain, way beyond what you can see, and they're thinking, well, that's where I want to go. I want to keep going. And then someone else is looking, I don't know if I want to live in the mountains. That kind of gets cold in the winter. I think I want to live in that little settlement that we see right before you get there. That might be a good place. And so because they're not communicating, because they're not talking, because they got their head down, because they're just doing what they got to do every day to survive, they're beginning to part and they don't even know it. And then what happens, it might be a day and everybody has the discussion. It might develop as you go and these two people are quabbling and these two people are. But what can happen is you reach a point and you start fracturing and the argument is, well, I thought we were going there. No, I thought we were going there. I was going there the whole time. And then you realize that the whole time leading up to that, you really weren't one team. You really weren't one family. You really weren't one relationship. You were kind of doing this. And then if you're not careful, that can cause anger. You might even feel betrayed. I thought we were going this way together and we're not. You feel betrayed. Motion gets in. You feel betrayed. You start saying things you wish you hadn't said. You see how that all just blows up? Can't you imagine a million different circumstances in your own life that that's happened? Miscommunication, betrayal. But really, was that what it was? Or was it just people with their heads down, not talking, not communicating, all of them forgetting that there's no I in team? So what I want you to think about and to consider today, and I want you to think of a couple of these examples that I gave you. One person realizing my family hasn't been a family for years. Another person realizing my kid's life went by and I let it go and I watched them go from a young child to someone who left the house and I missed all these years being intentional and doing everything I could with them. Somebody else going, I've not been a good teammate. I've been selfish. Whatever it may be. Just take a second. Look at your own life. Maybe even do a little diagram. I love writing like little Venn diagrams and notes and checklists. And, where are my teams? Where am I a member of a team? Here's my home team, and here's my work team, and, here's my church team, and here's my men's group team, or whatever teams you belong to. And then ask yourself a vital question. Do I know what all of them are trying to accomplish? You might know, you might not know, or you might be guessing. And maybe have a conversation with them. Where do we want to go? Where do we want to be in a year? Where do we want to be in 5 years? And then make that very clear in your head. One way to put them first, to make yourself part of that team, is to understand where everybody wants to go. And then once you have a clear picture, and this might take some time, this might take some conversations, might even be something we talk about more in other podcasts, in other videos, and other blog posts, however I may do it. Once you have a clear vision of those teams and where they want to go, then you start asking yourself, okay, how do I fit in? How do I support everybody? You be the catalyst to give everybody else a mindset. We are here to support each other. And then you might find that all of a sudden that family that was fractured is supporting each other and you're getting more done. Or that business or that company that was fractured is supporting each other and you're getting more done. Or that team, sports team you belong to that was fractured is coming together and supporting each other and getting more done, or whatever it may be. There's no I in team, but if you don't know what your team is, okay, if you don't see your part in it, if you don't understand what they're going, it's just a catchy slogan that's meaningless. Because obviously everybody individually thinks they have everyone else's, best interests in mind, and I'm not selfish and blah, 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 blah. But practically speaking, if you don't take the time to understand those things, you're selfish, you're self-centered, you're an I, okay? If you don't take the time to communicate, if you don't take the time to talk, if you don't take the time to paint those pictures, that's exactly what you are. So my friends, just show a little humility, have some conversations with the people you love, the people you work with, the people you're trying to accomplish something with. Make sure that you're all going toward the same objective. Be willing to listen. Okay? Then ask yourself, okay, where's my part in this? How do I support the best? And then you're going to find that you're accomplishing more. You got more peace. You got less anxiety. And life becomes less about I, and it does become more about others. And when it does, that's a fun place to be. It's fun. That's what I try to do every time I speak. One of the things I do when I'm getting ready to go do a speaking event is I ask them, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to get done? How would you like me to address your group? What's a win for you? When you talk to somebody that way, they get excited. It makes your job easier because you know exactly what their expectations are. You know exactly what you need to deliver to make it a great event or a great training for them. And then it's fun, and it should be that way. So I'm Silouan. There's no I in team, but what's your team? And I'm out. Peace.